You just heard From Where Its Roots Run from The Sun That Never Sets, Part 2. This is Neurosis, and this is the Rick and Mel Podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Jason, and hopefully, a lot of you are listening to this like with relatively little gap, so to have another intro is kind of probably weird to you, but hey, we do things by tradition. We've got a time-tested method.
We have broadcast and cinematic arts background.
Yeah, exactly. We got to do things professionally. We actually, just before we recorded that, we've been spending like the last 30 minutes trying to figure out a new podcast host aggregate with like a SoundCloud,
just some place
Squarespace,
to host stuff that isn't concerned about copyright. Since if anybody knows anything about this, we'll do a really quick little blurb. But our show is considered, in my understanding, we're just like a radio show. People aren't paying for our product. If you decide to do Patreon or any of that kind of stuff, that's basically just like, hey, thanks for what you're doing. Here's like a tip. We stick a $5 in your pocket or something. Mm-hmm. And we're using that money not to go out and party, but we're using it to try to like update our equipment to sound better, to make everything run more smoothly, be more of a professional operation.
And right now, TalkShoe, the one we've been using, is free, but there's a downside to using like free services. Like the servers crashed a couple times this week, and
this is the first time it's ever happened.
Yeah,
but it's a free service.
And
they have no
disconcerting a little.
Yeah, I don't want to lose all. We have hard copies of everything, but I would like to have something maybe that's more contemporary. If anybody out there knows, like, can we use this on? Can SoundCloud? I guess there's issues with copyright material on there. Yeah. Perhaps, I'm not sure. Or is Squarespace a better option? Like, we're willing to pay. I don't want to pay a ton. I want it to be easy and not take away from the time that we just devote to talking on the show.
And if we did one of those new services, we might even be able to host a website off of that service too, which is one of the things that
we'd like to do and get back to, show notes. And so every episode would have its own page with, unique album art and, show notes and that kind of stuff. It'd be nice to do that. Be able to listen for those old people that like to just go to the page and read it and listen to it right there to stream it.
Yeah.
That type of thing. So we're just, I'm not involved in technology enough to really keep up on that shit anymore.
I don't have time to keep up with that stuff.
I don't have time either.
So we're just pontificating and exploring our options. So if you know something, hit us up on social media or send us an email. And
if we could get like a great like AM transmitter in your backyard, we could just like do the shit live at a certain time, like
go full 1960s
kind of thing.
Pirate radio.
Yeah,
get a little ship offshore in England and do something.
But I think that our listenership would be considered like dwindled significantly from something like that. But that would be nice to be that easy to just like do it, put it here, people see it.
Well, and we also want to do it just for preservation purposes, but we also want to use something that is convenient for you guys too. To get messages that say, I was trying to download your episode, but it's not working. Like, that's not what we want, because that's how you lose people. People give up on a podcast when they think something's wrong or broken. Or
you got to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what we're trying to do. So any feedback or commentary or whatever would be greatly appreciated. So we ended part one kind of on a pretty esoteric, spiritual, crazy sort of level, and then we kind of start in that same sort of realm a little bit with From Where Its Roots Run, which is this. I think we mentioned before, a very tribalistic, shamanistic. To me, it's like the turning point of the record. It's like a palate cleanse. You get through Falling Unknown, and you're not ready to like do another song, like a traditional song with like lyrics and a chorus and things like this. And so this is like 3.5 minutes to just sort of like dump the system, or what I mean, like just
purge.
To purge and kind of get your mind kind of right for the second half of the record, which
it kind of builds up from.
It builds again. It built to Falling Unknown. That's like the first major crescendo, and then now it kind of dips back down, and then it's going to sort of build back up again.
Regroup, and then here's where we go
from the
here.
Sky. Yeah. So I think it fits perfectly. There's not a lot I have to say about this song from from a meaning standpoint, because there's no words. It's just a good kind of starting point to kind of get the second part of this show and the second half of the record sort of moving in that direction. But I think one thing I wanted to sort of share with you guys was, as I was sort of like exploring some stuff, I went looking for interviews on YouTube, because sometimes you find some cool interviews, and there are some nice interviews out there with Steve Von Till and Scott Kelly on some things. One where they talked about their experiences like touring with Pantera for the first time. But I was hoping for like, hey, has anybody out there like interviewed them and asked some questions about the sun that never sets? And of course, Neurosis is notorious for kind of keeping a pretty close.
They don't take the lid off of the creative process very much.
They don't really talk too much. I mean, they'll do interviews. They're not that kind of like, they'll do some touring, but it was right around this time, or right around the Times of Grace, that they kind of stopped doing a lot of touring. Now it's more like special dates and festivals.
It's on their own terms completely.
Yeah. And I think before that they were like really grinding out like a lot of touring. But
which is it's a terrible road to go. I mean,
yeah,
especially with a band like that who has a lot of, trying to have like this audiovisual component. Like you have to bring all that with you, because guaranteed the venue's not going to have it. Having this much gear to try to take, and then getting a guarantee of like $1,000 or something. It's like that's a hard way to make.
And I think too, like the type of music that they play in this era is pretty exhausting. Like I think they're not just like playing the songs live; they're kind of doing the songs,
like reenacting everything.
Yeah, like it's sort of there, and so I think it takes a lot out of them. But the stuff I read earlier from John Baisley from Baroness came from a sort of special decibel issue, because I think even Albert wrote in the beginning of that, and it was from the editor letter in that Neurosis issue, that for years he's been bugging these guys to do a Hall of Fame, and and then the 30th anniversary of the band sort of came up, and sort of it kind of marked a special opportunity. And even Albert was kind of cynical about it. He's like, you guys are probably not going to follow through on this, like, and all of a sudden they did, and they did 3 Hall of Fames for one for one issue and stuff. So again, they're notoriously sort of private and secretive about some of that stuff. But as I was looking on YouTube, I came across this comment, and it's awesome. And I don't know who this guy is. His name is Robert Demeter. I was going to maybe write him. He posted this about 7 months ago. But I thought, like, he really summed up a lot of kind of cool stuff about Neurosis. And so I thought I'd just sort of read this. We have some time. He says, Neurosis is a band you do not listen to. If you're just listening, you will never come close to getting it. Humans are afraid of facing all their pain, that endless deep well of ache within them, all their inner darkness that keeps them unconscious and blind, afraid of facing all the lies of their thoughts. Neurosis is strictly a band that you must surrender to. You must fully surrender to the music and purge, and purge some more. The ego-thinking mind is afraid of surrendering, and as everyone in the mind is a total lie, or as everything in the mind is a total lie, the prison of the mind. Do not fall into the trap of trying to understand Neurosis with your mind, because you will never be able to understand them with your thinking mind, as thoughts can only operate in duality, and duality is total illusion and reality. Neurosis has the ability to totally transform your ideas of what you believe music is, the real magical art of music, and Neurosis can broaden their horizons of creativity that you never knew existed, that are all far beyond words and far beyond all concepts and far beyond all ideologies of the mind. Listen to Neurosis's entire discography over the next 3 to 6 months alone and fully let go and fully surrender. Mold yourself into their music and let it seep into you deeply and honestly, like when you see drops on a window on a rainy day. As the drops accumulate and mesh together and fall slowly, allow their music to fall slowly into you the same way, and more and deeper, and don't let your thoughts get in the way. Do not think. He says, the more pain you experience by surrendering to their music, the more healing you will receive with the many hidden teachings in the music, and allow it to flow through you, because the immense beauty of the high consciousness of their band is far deeper than mere words, as lyrics are merely at the surface of images, and this magical band of beauty is far beyond all images. And he says, truth is always paradoxical. Yeah, most YouTube comments are like, fuck you, troll shit. Yeah. And I came across that. I was like, man, that's pretty interesting stuff. Nicely said. He said the only cures for pain is hidden perfectly deep within the pain. This is something they will never teach you in any school or in any church. Nothing is more liberating than fully facing all your darkness. Deep within that is far beyond the mind of thoughts. The only path to the light is by fully facing all the emptiness and darkness within. Infinite teachings of bliss and beauty far beyond any words.
This guy definitely does mushrooms.
Yeah.
Like confronting all of, seeing your faults and confronting them. That's all it takes. And then you accepting them, and then it sheds away.
Yeah.
Like these are all very ancient ideas.
For sure. Yeah. This is like Hinduism. This is Buddhism. This is meditation. This is like, deep
Taoism.
This is entranced, thinking,
Yeah. This is stuff that's gone on for thousands of years. This is just like the modern interpretation of it.
Yeah. It's even, Christianity kind of gets knocked sometimes in a modern sense, but if you look at true monastic Christianity, the monks and nuns and confining themselves and really like
the true idea is like the power of fasting, the power like to repair your body. Like
for sure.
all these things are like they rejuvenate the body and the spirit by having the self-control and the discipline to not do exactly what you want all the time.
Yeah. No.
That's all it takes is just a little bit, you know?
Yep. So I just thought that was a cool thing, especially after listening to Falling Unknown. Like I kind of came across that. And so speaking of all of this, we arrive at Crawl Back In. And Crawl Back In has this great lyrical line that says, "Time is truth, hard and cruel." You know, it's this idea of like going back into kind of the pain a little bit, and again that confrontation of it all. And you know, here's my thoughts on Crawl Back In. The way it opens up lyrically, it opens up with this line: "Hammer and skull, I am waiting to return your suffering. In my mind, I see you distant, broken, and lost again." And I kind of had this like evocative, like I was thinking of it in like a film sense of like, can you imagine the opening of the song with those lyrics, with a long pan kind of like zooming in, and then like standing there's like Leatherface just like holding like you know, it's like a horror movie about to begin. You know, there's this like pursuit in this song, like of the way the drums sort of work. They sort of oscillate. It's like they're always like foreboding and like coming after you in the same way. You know, we've been on a big John Carpenter kick, but one of the things that's so scary about like the character of Michael Myers is that he just keeps coming.
He's a force of nature. He's not a person. He can't be reasoned with.
He's just a force of nature. And so this like that opening line really got me. And then, you know, some of the other lines, you know, like I said, you know, about, you know, facing the realities and this uncontrollable truth that's like sort of coming after you, you know. And there's a real beautiful part to Crawl Back In too. This is the song to me that has like the most kind of soft, you know, it's got this kind of slint like guitar that's sort of working throughout it. Around the 4-minute mark, you get like a cool like mogwai sort of layering. You can tell there's like a lot of indie rock and just other kind of outside music sort of.
I don't know if it was an outside thing or if that was like in the zeitgeist at the time, because there's a lot like For Carnation, a lot of that stuff was like real. Everybody had kind of a consistent thing, but it all came out at the same time. Yeah. Well,
look at like another record that came out in 2001, which is Catatonia: Last Fair Deal Gone Down, which was like bathed in Nick Drake and Jeff Buckley and The Cure and all these different things that had been there for Catatonia, but like they really kind of came out, you know.
They were like mature enough to like take those influences and run with them and make it their own.
I mean, Paradise Lost was doing a lot of weird stuff. My Dying Bride, Anathema put out like Judgment and the Fine Day to Exit, you know. Yeah. So, I mean, you had a lot of bands that were like exploring, I don't know, their indie rock or at least just deeper roots of some different things and really kind of getting into like some of the soft, loud kind of dynamics of stuff. And so to me, this song is really dramatic because, you know, it builds in the same way. You know, it's got the crescendo build that the Neurosis is kind of known for. But I think the crescendo build is a lot more softer and kind of like there's a heartbroken sort of quality about this song, too, that I really, really like. So it's cool. And, you know, the slint guitar I was mentioning to Mark is kind of cool, too, because Steve Albini produced the very first Slint record, Tweez. And then he didn't do their follow-up to that, which is kind of their big masterpiece record, which just escaped me. It's the one with them sitting in
Spiderland?
Spiderland, thank you. But Albini's famously quoted as saying that's the best sounding record I've ever heard. Like, he loved it, you know. It's kind of the same way people talk about like Funhouse from the Stooges. Like, that's like the greatest sounding like rock record if you're like that, like the real raw like rock kind of sound or something. And so it's kind of cool that like Albini has a chance to like mold that maybe with these guys, although he kind of tends to say he takes a real hands-off approach. He just lets them do whatever they want and just gets the best sound for him. But he's got an aesthetic that for sure
people come to him for. Like there's a certain amount of like organicness that every band, no matter who it is, even Bush, you know,
he did Bush,
that has a great guitar sound.
Yeah,
I don't really care for the music that much, but the guitar sound is undeniably good. So he has like people come to him for a very specific reason. Like we want stuff to sound loud and raw, and what maybe like a live representation of us actually sounds like.
He might be one of the best producers I've ever heard to encapsulate beautiful noise.
Him and Kurt Ballou. Kurt Ballou does some unreal shit.
Yeah, with beautiful noise. You know? But you go back to like the noisiness of like Jesus Lizard Records and stuff like that, and even In Utero is probably it's like up there with like OK Computer or Kid A and being like one of the most noisy, disjointed, uncommercial commercial records like of all time. Like Kurt Cobain was trying to like almost like sync Nirvana with that record, like in almost like
see how far you could push
purge fans away to like say who's the true fans, you know, like I mean just songs with like just feedback all over the place. I mean it's like obnoxious and I loved it, so that kind of probably told me I was like on the right path to extreme music, or you know what I mean, you know, when I heard that. But I did know a lot of people complain about that record, like it's not as poppy as like you know, Nevermind and stuff like that. So I think he has this mastery of taking all these disparate elements and you know, they've got layers and layers. You've got the viola, you've got the synths, you've got the crushing guitar, you've got the pounding drums. He can kind of do all these things and make it kind of work. You know? And so I think Albini's, you know, he's kind of definitely a secret weapon and an MVP of this record in particular, you know. So we have Crawl Back In, and then we're going to end with Watchfire, kind of a short set here to sort of set up the grand kind of finale of this whole record. And Watchfire, I don't have too much to say about this record or this song. To me, this is one of the most compositionally interesting songs. It kind of has, it almost doesn't like fit sometimes. It has like movements within it. You know, it's not a cohesive song in the way that like some of the other ones.
It almost kind of bridges toward the end of, you know. The Stones from the Sky. So
exactly. So
Stones from the Sea.
Stones from the Sea.
And you put Sky on there.
I'm really. Oh no, it's Stones from the Sky.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay.
So we were either right or wrong earlier.
Well, the sea thing is just because of the clanging. It sounds like a buoy or a boat off in the distance trying to avoid, you know.
It almost reminds me of the opening track from My Dying Bride, Angel in the Dark River.
Yeah.
Kind of has that like kind of weird quality, but we'll talk more about Stones from the Sky later because that's good stuff. So enjoy Crawl Back In and Watchfire. That was Watchfire, and then we started with Crawl Back In. And Watchfire we were just listening to because that was one we hadn't planned to really talk too much about. And it's it's not the most dynamic of the songs on this record, but it fits right in with like kind of the narrative feel. You know, you can't have all highs all the time with the way that they build their music in terms of like crescendos type stuff, you know. Mm-hmm. And Watchfire, I was asking Mark, like, man, the riff, especially those last couple minutes, the sort of dissonant minor chord riffing with like feedback kind of worked around. I'm like, what doom metal band am I thinking of? And you came up with it.
Anathema.
Yeah.
Like, Danny used to hold out, dissonant feedback, like, better than anybody, and
they still did, even when they were doing like more like rock oriented stuff. Yeah. You know, even like on Fine Day to Exit and stuff like that, he used.
But some of those early, like, Crestfallen EP and Serenades and
Silent
Pentecost 3
Pentecost
and some
3,
of that stuff, like, that almost like was kind of the propulsive, factor of the songs. Just a lot of that, just holding it out and seeing how long and how morose you could make the thing sound.
Danny Cavanaugh, man, that was his kind of specialty.
Back when he had dreadlocks.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now we're left kind of, with the final conclusion, and it's Resound and Stones from the Sky. Before we get to that, because we'll kind of be sort of ending on that, I did want to take an opportunity to recognize the Patreon people for a moment, because I feel like once we say our goodbyes, I want to talk about the song and let the song sort of happen, if that makes sense. If you're okay with kind of going out of our order. Because I feel like Stones from the Sky like deserves that like just kind of focus point. But we did a Patreon special not too long back that kind of got thrown into your download feed, and since then the response has been fantastic as well. We're up to, I think, 26 Patreons total, and so I wanted to acknowledge some of the people that have kind of taken some time out of their busy lives to donate to us and to support us in any kind of way. And so we've got Daniel Stanton, Matthew Wolf, Stephen Wheeler, Robert Blanton, Jeff Fitzgerald, and then actually a friend of ours who went with us to go see Mayhem and
Immolation.
Yeah, recently. It was Stavros Glitsos. He's told me to say it with as much Greek emphasis as possible.
Yeah, I've never heard it said.
Yeah,
so.
I know. Yeah. We just call him Stavros. So, Tom Veasley, Per Ove Narland, which is, I gotta guess, a Norwegian name.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. Nolan Bradley, and then Amelia Lombardi, which I can say that one because I lived in Italy pretty well. So, but yeah, so I mean, that's in addition to all the people that we announced on the last episode that we did before Scorpions 2 was actually released. But we appreciate that, and if you are interested in becoming a Patreon, to go to patreon.com, and I believe it's Requiem Metal is the / but if you just look up Requiem, I have it loaded on my computer.
Requiem Podcast, you can find it.
And so we're looking to get some more Patreons out there. We're hoping, we think after maybe this month we'll have enough to buy 2 new mics, and then just as we were kind of talking about in the last one, we're looking to use some of the Patreon money to maybe find a better service,
hosting service
and stuff like that. And so we're trying to put money into action. I know that Ben Adler, I kind of reached out to him a little bit to pick his brain about it, if he was interested in which Eclipse or Requiem back issue, and he said, well, I want to wait till they're all digitized into like kind of a digitized PDF. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe that's something we could use that money towards, is to maybe hire somebody to, or a friend of ours or somebody that has a lot of board time that would be willing to scan in a lot of stuff for us, and maybe do something along those lines. But
the hardest part is that they're not standard size things, and a lot of them are old, so the newsprint,
the print's hard to read.
It's hard to read, so it'd be interesting.
It's not perfect. I wish we had, if we had like the original like digital files of some of that.
I have the first 2 digitally done as a PDF, but I don't think the resolution's that great.
Yeah. So that early 90s zine technology that just didn't.
Well, the thing is, the original one of the Requiem. Me and Chris Dick started the Requiem zine back in early 90s. He found a paginated version, I think, of the first issue in his. He was going through like a safe or so. I don't know why he has a safe, but going through a safe and found that, and he was going to
wow.
bring it, and so I could actually scan the original. Because normally you'd have the paginated piece, and then you'd put that on the copy machine and copy it from that.
Yeah.
So the original was like a second generation.
Yeah.
So getting a scan of the first generation would be nice.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. So maybe we'll send that out to people in a digital form just when we get that, and then I'll check with all those people here. I'm hoping over Christmas break when I have a little bit of I have some days to just kill, because as a teacher it's pretty crazy until you get these breaks.
Yeah.
And then reach out to all the Patreons and maybe take a trip to the post office and mail out like a random Eclipse or Requiem issue, just as kind of an initial thank you before we do kind of some of our Patreon specials. But we have gotten some feedback from people about what kind of things they're sort of interested in doing. So if you have some thoughts on what you as a Patreon might be interested in beyond just maybe your a token copy of Eclipse or Requiem, if there's I know one person got back in touch with us and said they really like the idea of doing like a metal guide to jazz, because he said he's always been intimidated, like how an entry point, he has no idea like how to get into a genre like that. And I know we've joked about some, indie guy or a metal guide to indie rock, metal, just some different.
We could start throwing those out. I think as one episodes they would be fine. I think anything more than that might be too. It might throw people off too much.
Yeah. But we can at least hit a couple highlights of some fun, like good starting points and things like that. But and definitely we've had some interest from people that, down the road when we get more a bigger group of Patreons to sort of almost have a lottery where we pull a name out and say, hey,
what do you want?
Give us three choices, and we'll pick one that tickles our fancy.
Don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Don't say that you want an Atreyu show.
Suicide Silence.
Want to hear it.
Yeah, can't do it.
I have no interest in that.
I have good faith in our listeners that they are not big fans of Suicide Silence and that sort of stuff. So I think
some people are contrarians and like to stir up the pot.
That's true.
Stir up the shit pot.
Let's see. Let's put these two assholes out there and let them hang on.
Do a Trivium retrospective for us.
You know what I've heard? Word on the street is the new Trivium is surprisingly awesome. That's actually come from some pretty
it's more death metal-y, and I
haven't heard it.
I watched the Banger review show. I'll listen to that every once in a while, and I know that the main guy, I forget I don't remember what his name is.
Sam Dunn?
No, the guy from Trivium was a huge Emperor fan. You could definitely hear it in some of the music, but
good for him.
This one sounded more. At least the clips I heard on that show sounded more death metal-ish, but it's still not enough for me to go and check the record out. I just don't care.
That's why Mark and I make a good team. I'm like the eternal optimist, and Mark's kind of like, I'm over this shit. It takes a lot to get me to get into this. And I respect that, because I'm that way with a lot of things. I tell my students constantly, I don't think I know how to like this. So
thank you, Jeff Wagner, for that.
You probably don't want to waste your time with that.
That comment is the best. It's the most diplomatic way to say I don't give a shit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not gonna like this at all. So let us know what you thought. We're always welcoming more patrons to go on patreon.com. And then also shoot us an email at requiempodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook, Mark and Jason. And that's a good way to get in contact with us. I check that usually every couple days. And on Twitter at Podcast Requiem. Follow us on that. And then another thing that I really think would be helpful is for everyone that hasn't to go on iTunes. If you do go to iTunes, or if you subscribe to iTunes. If you don't, it'd be nice just to go to iTunes anyways. Leave us a 5-star rating if you believe we deserve that, and a comment, because apparently the ratings help a lot. They
bring you to the top of the pile.
They bring you to the top of the pile. So
we have a 5-star rating at this point.
Yeah, and I know we have a great rating and stuff like that, but the more we get of them, if we got like an influx of them, it'd be kind of badass. So we know you're out there, so it'd be really cool. And we're always looking for feedback. Let us know if you like things. Let us know if we talked too deeply about Neurosis for your liking. But I think that's why you turn to a podcast like us.
Yeah.
Is we're not going to give your same old commentary. So that's our kind of send off. So let's talk about this last song then. We've done all the we've messed the whole order up just to mess your world up. But we've got these last two pieces of music, which is Resound and then Stones from the Sky. And Resound kind of starts with the kind of like weird tolling bells, and you said that it's the same type of bells that you hear at the beginning of Stones from the Sky.
Ear. It's but modulated to a different,
but it's kind of modulated
frequency or something.
Yeah. So it's really just kind of an hors d'oeuvre to what you're about to get with
the precursor
Stones from the Sky. And one thing about Stones from the Sky is I didn't read all of the John Baisley comment on this record from the Neurosis issue. But he says, I put a limit on the time I would spend writing this piece, the exact time it takes to listen to Sun That Never Sets. Finally, I always have and never will cease to include an homage and a nod to the last 5.5 minutes of Stones from the Sky on every Baroness record, at least until Neurosis asks me to stop. It may be the most awe-inspiring 5.5 minutes of recorded music this side of the millennium. If it doesn't send a shiver down your spine on record or on stage, then you just wasted your time reading this review. And I thought that was kind of a cool little thing, because I made mention to Mark that I think this is my favorite Neurosis song because of the last 5.5 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's, you compared it to like jazz, speaking of jazz a little bit.
Yeah, like a really simple, sequence of notes, but done to like just such an impressive effect, just building and building and building on the same just like throughout the whole, even starting with like the tempo of the bells. It sounds like some ship, coming
it's like
in.
An ominous,
it's like something from The Fog or some shit.
Yeah, it is. It has like a John Carpenter Fog kind of thing.
The tolling of the bell thing, but just that tempo starts, and then bringing in the different instrumentation, doing the exactly same simple thing. Mm-hmm. And then the only thing that weaves in and out of that is just the vocals and like the weird like just electronic noises and chaos. And
you've got Chris Force's like viola and violin sort of like entering at certain moments and just adding like, again, another kind of creepy sort of layer to everything.
And I'm not sure, like, as far like how the end starts to fall apart a little bit. I don't know how much of that is Albini and how much of that's Landis incorporating, stuff with electronics. But I don't think I've heard the song live.
I can't remember if they played this at Metal Fest when I saw them. I want to say they did, because that's the night that the lightning storm was sort of happening, and I just kind of was having this weird feeling like, oh, this is like overwhelming to me.
Well, and Vontel threw his guitar on the ground because the strap kept breaking.
Yeah.
Which I was like, okay, come on. It's a bit much.
But there is, there's something about, I compared it like My Bloody Valentine, Loveless, how, if you're not familiar with that record, Kevin Shields, who is in the band and produced it, you hear like the songs themselves on that record, like, he's doing some of the same techniques that you heard like the Beatles do on Sgt. Pepper, where they're playing things like backwards and stretching the tape and stuff. It's kind of one of the last like true analog masterpieces, that Loveless record. And to me, Albini, a guy that worships like analog, I feel like he has a hand in this, because he's doing some of the same kind of things that Kevin Shields would have done with music, where he's almost like destroying it and tearing it apart in small ways, and you hear the song like dissolve at the very end. And
for like to physically impact, I don't know a whole lot of instances where the degradation of the recording amplifies the intent of the song.
Yeah,
which is really to have that start to fall apart, and then when it comes back in, all the levels are peaked.
Yeah,
I remember the first time I heard this was on headphones, and that starts breaking down, then boom, comes back in with a riff again, and it's just every time it comes back in,
red.
You just it's like getting hit with a fucking folding chair every single time, and you just drop right to the ground.
Absolutely. And I remember the first time I heard this, I thought my CD was skipping.
Yeah,
I'll be honest. I was like, goddamn promo. They sent me a bad promo. And I've done it to other people before, where I played it and I said, just listen to the song. And they're like, what's wrong? What's happening? Like, they're uncomfortable when it starts like falling apart. They think it's, it's not right. Mm-hmm. And that's the point. There's this like level. And if you hear Loveless, there's a lot of those sort of tricks on that record that do that kind of thing. But it's like the dissolution of the kind of very fabric of music itself. You're kind of hearing, and if that sounds kind of like pretentiously profound, well, you clearly haven't been listening to like the other things we've been talking about, because they've earned it. There's very few bands that sort of earn the ability to say these kind of things about. But like when you hear songs like Falling Unknown or Stones from the Sky, like it's kind of transcendent. It just kind of is.
There's a lot of bands where you hear this kind of like hyperbole and when they're talking about it, but they're full of shit.
Yeah.
And this band is clearly not.
Yeah. And what's interesting is 2001 you heard this and this was a far less mainstream record but than the record I'm about to compare it to, but one of the things that like Radiohead did in 2001 with Kid A is they were really interested in this style of music called like glitch, where you almost like scratch your own like music files and stuff like that, so it like purposely like skipped and did like DJ Shadow did some things like kind of with that influenced like some of the things that like Radiohead did. on Kid A and on Amnesiac as well. And
He was
to me,
making
it's part
beats out of destroying the music.
Yeah, and so they're like, it's kind of, to me, part of the same kind of narrative and the same sort of approach almost, you know. And I mean, like I said, those bands are talked about with reverence for a reason, because they're taking chances that a lot of other bands wouldn't have taken, like to push their boundaries as far as they can possibly push them.
Yeah, and somehow they keep a consistent kind of like pulpit for people to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for
like
sure.
Radiohead's one of those few bands that is. I don't really care about the last couple records, but at least everything from what was the first one? Paranoid Android on it.
OK Computer.
OK Computer to
probably, like, for you, probably In Rainbows and stuff like that was probably one of the last
In Rainbows
ones.
I didn't really care about either.
Oh, really?
Like right up until it was like the most interesting kind of kinetic weird shit I think they were doing.
Yeah.
It got too refined in like what was it, a heart-shaped pool, a moon-shaped pool or something?
Yeah,
Was the last one?
That record actually, like, the more you listen, you gotta spend some time with that one.
It's just not as blatant.
Yeah, it's way more like ambient.
Yeah, like the blatant creativity of that era. That's what kind of excited me about that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And so Stones from the Sky it's a perfect, I mean, I can't think of a more perfect song to end an episode with. So we'll let the song kind of speak for itself at this point. But enjoy Resound and Stones from the Sky, and hopefully you've enjoyed our exploration into Neurosis, and we just gave you all those wonderful ways to get in touch with us. And
our double size, king size episode.
King size, man.
But you get it the same day. You don't have to wait
a
month or whatever.
So enjoy Resound and Stones from the Sky for Requiem Metal Podcast. I'm Jason.
And I'm Mark.
Once is enough, trial is alone. Grace fall into us. All through the night, Father, I crawl. Son of my soul, be revealed. Walking amongst the stones from the sky. feeling there